My name is Marta Leitner, and I was born in March 3rd, 1934, in Czechoslovakia. Nowadays it's Slovakia, in a small town, and I had a very pleasant and very nice childhood, surrounded by family, extended family of my father, and my father was very respected citizen in that small town. He owned a hardware store on the main street, and everything was very pleasant and very nice, because my father had a quite big family, and still his father and parent and mother.
Can you look in here?
Oh,
it's not finished. You can't.
Where the light is.
Right here. Yeah.
Okay. And
did you have siblings?
I had one sister, older sister. We were two daughters. And when the war broke out, I was very young, and I will never forget that one day I was playing with friends in front of our house, and all of a sudden I see in front of my eyes people are marching, young, old, with suitcases, with bags. And I was too young to understand why I see what I'm seeing. Very soon after that, I realized, although I was very young, as I mentioned, that most of my family was gone. From one day to the other, I was surrounded with beautiful childhood, extended family of my father, good life, very well-to-do family. And day after I saw this marching the people, since that day my family was gone. Practically most of the family was gone.
What happened to them?
They were taken to the concentration camp.
And you were not?
I was not. My family, me, my father, my mother, and my sister, we were not taken that time. If you're asking me why, them and not us,
yeah.
And that's a legitimate question, most of the people are asking me that. As I was too young, I assumed that it was connected with money. Yet the other family members had the money as well. I mean, my father had owned the store with his brother. This hardware store on the main street, very known family, a very known store. It was not a big town, but quite a bit of Jews lived at the town. And the brother with the family, with two sons, the brother, his wife and two sons, were gone.
Did you know where they went?
They went to the concentration camp.
But you knew that they went to a concentration camp?
That time I didn't, because I was too young to understand, but I saw that I don't have family anymore. Yeah. Very few left from the big, extended, well-to-do, beautiful family. I had very nice, very pleasant childhood, just good memories.
What language did you speak at home?
My first language was, because my parents went to Austro-Hungarian schools, so they spoke Hungarian at home, so my first language was Hungarian. That's how my parents spoke at home, and that's what me and my sister spoke at home before we went to school. When I started, I was 6 years old when I went to school, I studied Slovak. So this was my second language.
What percentage of the children in your school were Jewish? Were you a minority in school?
No, I went to a Jewish school. No, there were quite a bit of Jews in my town. And they have a Jewish school, and I went to the Jewish school. They were, yeah. Then when I went to the high school after the war, it was a different story. But before the war, there were quite a bit of children there, and Jewish, we had Jewish teachers and Jewish schools in a small town, yeah.
But while you were in school, did you notice anti-Semitism?
No. I was too young.
Okay.
I was too young. I just knew.
Did your family belong to a temple or synagogue?
Yes. There was one synagogue there. One temple across the street, on the main street, the main temple. And my parents belonged there. But we were not really religious. We were modern. We were not very religious family at all. We were very modern. I think we had kasher at home, but it was not really religious, I would say, just like modern Jews.
Okay.
Yeah, that we belonged to the synagogue, just big holidays. We went with the parents to the synagogue.
What percentage of the people in your small town were Jewish, would you guess?
I would say maybe a third. Relatively, I think a lot of Jews in that small town lived, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell me what happened?
After they most of my family were taken to the concentration camp. From that time on, they were every day new and new laws came out, regulations and laws against the Jews. First, the Jews had to bring to the townhouse, to the municipality, all our gold, furs, and silver. And I was again still very young, but I remember that one very much. Why? Because I went with my mother to the town hall and brought all our silverware, gold, and fur coats. We had to bring it them and give it to the German there. My father used to travel on business and used to bring me and my sister very beautiful gifts when he traveled. And one of the gifts that my father brought me, I think I was about 6 years old, was a fur coat that I was extremely happy with because we lived in a very cold climate. And as a child to have a fur coat, it was unusual, and I loved it. And a few days after my father brought it to me, I had to go with my mom and give it to them. That's why I will never forget it until I leave. I had to give it to the German because it was a fur coat. Me, myself, handed to them. And for a child, it was very, very difficult. I didn't understand why I got it from my father, a gift, and now I have to give it to somebody that I don't know why. I mean, too young to understand, but very painful. I remember that. That's why I will never forget it. And then new and new laws and regulation against the Jews came almost on daily basis. Now, the Germans didn't occupy yet Hungary, but they occupied us already. Hungary was occupied later on, and my mother had a brother who lived in Budapest, in Hungary. And because they had the means, my parents, they were thinking to send my sister first, who was older, and then me after her, to Hungary, because Hungary was not yet occupied by the German, and they hoped the children will be further, I mean, they'll be maybe more safe there. They wanted to help the children as normally parents want to. And my sister was the older one, the oldest, and it was all illegal and extremely expensive. So I remember like today, my sister was sent to Hungary to stay with her uncle, the sister of my mother, brother of my mother. And
how did she go
then
about,
after,
how did she travel? Was it by train?
No. This was a taxi. Those were illegal people who made money on transferring people. Yeah. So my sister was taken by taxi through the border to Hungary to stay with my mother's brother. She was 13 years old. I was 4 years younger. And I was the one who was going to go after her. And I remember like today, at night, a taxi came to pick me up. And I think also my grandfather, mother's father, was with us in this car. It was at night, dark, and we were in this taxi going straight towards the Hungarian border. All of a sudden, the middle of the night, the taxi they went straight to the border. All of a sudden they turned back. I didn't know what happened. What happened? We are going to Hungary yet. They are getting back.
And who were you with in the taxi at that time?
The driver.
Right.
And my grandfather, my mother's father. I remember he had to go to the restroom, and he had to stop the taxi. At night he had to go, to to clean himself. I remember that. And then when we came, all of a sudden we are going back, not heading to, coming back. Obviously I didn't know what happened. Later on, I understood that it was on the border, there was a flood, a big flood on the border, flooding, and all the villagers were out and filling up sandbags because it was illegal, that what we did, they would catch us. There is no question. So on time, he got probably the message and turned back home. Later on, I understood that maybe because of this flood on the border between Czechoslovakia and Hungary and the flooding, I am here and I can tell you my story. Because, why I'm saying that? Because my sister, who was in Hungary at that time, And my uncle was shot by the German and thrown to the Danube in Budapest. And my sister was 13 years old, and she was on her own there in Budapest. And already the German occupied Hungary as well. That's why they shot the Jews there, many of them, and they thrown them to the Danube. And one was the uncle of my, the brother of my mother, who my sister lived with for a while. And that time when my parents heard that, again, it was very, very, very expensive, all that stuff. It was all, they wanted my sister to come back home. She was alone there. She was 13 years old, and the Germans were already there also. And the big group of the people who, like my sister, she was not the only one who the parents sent to Hungary. A big group of people wanted to come back with my sister. And all the group on the middle of the border there were caught. The whole group of people were caught and sent to Auschwitz, to concentration camp. So here we were 4 before, now we are only 3. My sister was already gone. And a new law came out against the Jews, because it started to be already later on, and the Russians were nearing to the borders of Czechoslovakia, so they wanted the Jews leave the places and be further away from the liberators. So me, my father, and my mother had to leave the home. My parents were still very young, and moved to another town by the name of Trnava.
Do you know how to? Could you spell that
Yes,
name?
Trnava, Trnava, which is an hour from the capital of Slovakia, which is Bratislava. So we moved to Trnava, which was on the west. I am from the east part of Slovakia. That was the west part of Slovakia. So all the Jews had to move away from the east to the west. So we 3 of us moved, left everything there, obviously. And now, my father was not only a owner of the store, but he also studied. In the middle of the war, he had this feeling that it would be good to have a profession besides to be a store owner. So he learned how to fix, because we had this hardware store, to fix roofs, and he learned a trade. And when we moved to Trnava, to the small town of West Slovakia,
There was just 3 of you.
Just 3 of us.
Yes.
And I was still very, very young, yeah. And he contacted, probably before we left home, he probably contacted the family by the name of Blachak, the name of the family that we got a small place to live in their home in Trnava. He was a merchant of old scrap iron,
metal, yeah.
Scrap metal. So he was connected with my father's profession, and I think he contacted them before we came to Trnava, because he was still very young, and they welcomed us, 3 of us, and my father started to work for him there. They were a very prominent family in Trnava. He was Czech, he was not Jewish, and she was Jewish. And they had 2 daughters, and they had a house, I will never forget, it's like a dome, a big, like a small castle. They were very known, very prominent family in this small town. And they gave us a 1-bedroom apartment in their house to live in. And my father was working for him there. Until one day,
Can we just back up a little? I just want to know, do you know how to spell the family's name?
Blachak. Blattak.
Good.
Blachak.
Thank you.
Yes. And Trnava was the only town in Slovakia, in that time Czechoslovakia, that a certain night, I think it was in 1943, 44, they came to pick up that night only the men, not the family, but men. Here my father was taken away, and Blachak was also taken away because he was Czech. He was not Jewish, he was Czech. Yeah. So he was, as a Czech, he was taken away, and my father was Jewish. And again, this picture at night, when they came to take away my father, again, I will never forget, yet I was still very young, because it was like a small castle, this house, that we stayed there. It was this big wall around, like, like big homes that people don't want, like, how you call it, like a facade, around the house. In the middle of the night, I look at the window, and I see the shadows of endless German soldiers on the wall. I don't know, maybe hundreds of them, because this house was a very big one. And they all with a weapon against the house, against the windows, against the house. I remember that like today. And that night, my father was taken away from us. So here I am staying with my mother. And Mrs. Blachak went, as she was Jewish, but I don't know, but I assume it was a very prominent, very well-to-do family in this small town. And she went to the city hall and took out her husband back home.
Wow.
He was not Jewish.
Right, he was Czech.
Yes, and we asked her, we begged her, please do it, help my father, bring him home back. So she said, I cannot do that. I cannot do that. So he was taken to Auschwitz. My sister was already in Auschwitz, but my father didn't know. It was not long before the end of the war already. It was, I think, in September 1944. That time there were people who were already liberated. There were places that they were already liberated. But my father was taken away, to Auschwitz. And then Mrs. Blachak came to my mom and told her, I'm very sorry, but you cannot stay here anymore, because next time they will come to pick up the women and the children. It was an exception of this town that we lived in, that night they didn't pick up the family, but just the men. So here I am with my mom, and she tells my mom, you cannot stay here, because they will come to pick you up, and your daughter.
Was she Jewish?
She was Jewish.
Yes.
She was Jewish.
But her husband was Czech.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And
she probably realized her own danger by keeping your mother.
And she helped 150 Jews in Trnava, in the town. She helped me and my mother and another 150 Jews in this town to get free, to get liberated there.
Wow.
Yet she was Jewish. Me and my mother, we were penniless towards the end of the war. As rich we were, known, we didn't have any money anymore. I was too young again. I didn't realize it that time. So here, she found a place for us to go hiding there. It was a private home, Christian people there, yeah. And they took a big chance and risk to hide us. They did it for money. They did it for money. We didn't have the money anymore. But Mrs. Blachak paid them and another 150 homes or apartments, or I don't know the detail, for Jews who didn't have any money anymore towards the end of the war, to hide them. And they were liberated there because of her.
And they risked their lives.
And they risked their life exactly so. And now I will tell you how they risked their life. Because the hiding place that I was in, and my mom, was a private home who had a basement. They used the basement there that time like a refrigerator. They didn't have refrigerators, so they kept food and everything. The basement was always cold, so they kept food there in order to be fresh.
Sure.
Here, the basement was a long room, and me and my mother and another family, I even remember the name, Tiroler, a father, mother, and an 18-year-old girl. We were hiding 5 of us in that one place. 2 families, me, my mother, and Tiroler, his wife, and an 18-year-old daughter. He was an engineer. This Tiroler was an engineer.
A Jewish family.
Yes,
sure.
Yes, a Jewish family. Yes. So how are we going to hide there in order that we won't be visible and we won't be in danger there? So it was a genius idea of this engineer Tiroler to erect a wall, like a wall, as to shorten the basement and have a small room at the end of the basement. He erected a wall there. Now, we have to get into this room, and we have to eventually come out of this room too.
Wow.
So, how we go in and how we come out.
And how many people would be in there?
5.
5 people?
5 people.
Wow.
5 people. Yes. A small room, 2 beds, couldn't even move practically. So they dug. The basement was was not a finished basement. It was floor was dirt. It was not finished, at that time. So they dug in the floor there, in this dirt, they dug a big hole under this erected hole.
The Christian family did that.
The engineer did it. The engineer who wanted to make sure that we are safe there.
And the engineer was Jewish.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But they let him to do that. Now, this hole, 5 people, we went in through this hole to this room. And how do you camouflage this hole? How do you do it that if somebody comes that they know that there are 5 Jews hiding in this house? How do you go about that to camouflage it? So his, again, a genius idea was, he told the landlord woman, buy, 5 sacks of potatoes, because that they kept in the basement, potatoes and food. And he opened those sacks and threw 5 sacks like that of potatoes over this hole against the wall, like a mountain of potatoes. Who would think that 5 Jews are hidden behind those potatoes?
Wow.
And what happened? Somebody, maybe neighbors, knew that there are 5 Jews hidden in this house. And we had an agreement with the landlord. If something happens, how we will know that something is wrong. So they told my mom that we were under their bathroom, that they will drop a heavy metal something on the floor, so we will know that there is a danger there.
A warning.
And a warning. And here, one night, we got a warning. They looked for us there for hours.
You could hear them.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And they knew that 5 Jews are hidden in this house.
But they did not know where.
They couldn't find us.
Wow.
So this was a genius camouflage, a genius idea, and whatever, we were safe that night. But